Okay, here we go again. This is a bit where I go, I told you so. It's actually better than I told you, actually. It's far more advanced in some ways and probably over my head anyway. But then that's the idea with exploratory minds, right? Bringing in the most interesting aspects of any subject. Hence the intro I've used sometimes with the on the other channel with the text the most interesting aspects. Seeing where that goes, particularly when science or any body of knowledge, whether it's scientific or not, stumbles across things that are not really set in stone yet. They're still trying to discover how it all works in a bigger picture. And I said, once I found this thing about light being perfectly reflected, or it's more complicated than that. It was like a certain spectrum, a red light, and reflected at a particular angle, you get a perfect reflection on a particular material that they were manufacturing, this crystalline material. They now know that they could change it in different ways to perfectly reflect other forms and so on. I theorised, well, if a photon could be stored when they perfect this, you got binary digits, but the presence of a photon is one, and the absence of a photon another. So I looked up further, and it's MIT technology again. I honestly didn't know this was being considered. I just theorized. I looked at the data, but that was from MIT back then as well. So I stumbled across MIT again, talking in those terms, but it's more than that. We go over that actually. If I scroll through what we got here. Bring that down. There we go. Single photons are ideally suited for sending information in digital form, so that each photon encodes a 0 or a 1, just like I thought. If they can perfect certain technologies, you'll be able to do this. Of course, we've already got optical storage data like compact disc and all that anyway. It uses light, laser to bounce off, and you got your eye to read what comes back off the CD, things like that. But this is not so. It's, your 0 and 1. Presence of a photon is 1 and absence is a 0. So it's easy, they're saying, it's easy to imagine that this is all the data that a single photon can hold. Not so. In theory, there is no limit to the amount of information a single photon can encode. Of course, that's theory. And I can see, don't fully understand it, but I can see why they would lean towards that anyway. We always seem to be able to chop things up, divide into smaller aspects and so on. You can do that infinitely. I believe you can divide, although a photon is not a particle, or is it a particle wave argument? I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But even with physics that's focused on physical materials, you've always found, it's made out of something smaller, smaller and smaller. And this is division. I think the particle dimension is infinite. So an argument, or a perspective, if true, if it is infinite, a perspective needs to be put on how there's perhaps a feedback loop between, I don't know how to term this. I mean, I'm not familiar with complicated terminologies when it comes to all these things. Anyway, I'm a layman words, but a feedback loop between expansion and contraction causing a boundary condition that we call a particle, and we measure that division and call it atom. The constituents, the parts of an atom, like proton, electrons, positrons, things like this, going around the central atom. Things like that. They're just like, they have their place and position, but it's also a result of dividing via the accuracy of the tools that we measure our world with. The sharper the tool, the more accurate, more sharper the division until you get to the quantum scale. You get the uncertainty principle. There's videos on Odyssey about this in ways that are very interesting, with a whole other set of videos that I have not necessarily directly associated, but I can see the association with it. That I talked about tetrahedral geometry. So it's all going out there on a kind of veering off track, really. But the point is, I thought, oh, Norton won. But now, with other things considered, theoretically infinite. But we're dealing with frequency now, wavelength, and rather than a electrical charge on a circuit board, we're having like a optical thing to read, possibility to read just in individual photons, perhaps, it's a whole different way of considering digital data storage. So there's no limit to the amount of information a single photon can encode, apparently, according to MIT technologyreview.com. This is where this is. This was September 23rd, 2016. Other information with the article out at Exploratory Minds is related to information at 2013, so things have evolved since then quite a lot, as you can imagine, and perfecting their development of certain materials that can reflect perfectly. So this raises an interesting question: how much information can physicists pack into a single photon in practice rather than just theory? What does current technology allow? Today we get an answer thanks to the work of Tristan Tentrup and pals at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. They have packed more than 10 bits into a single photon for the first time. 10 binary digits in one photon. And I think from what I can tell looking up, a photon isn't a particle per se. It's more like a quantum measurement of the smallest measurement possible, which is a Planck's distance. There's the smallest thing we know of that size that can be measured. Of course, we could measure even smaller. But a wavelength itself, given a particular size, can alter in shape, frequency, so you get more data there via that as well, rather than just a set size. There's different ways to look at this. So there's a whole chart here. I don't fully understand it just yet, but roughly makes sense with certain things, I think. This is basically reading the photon. the method is straightforward in theory. The approach is to associate a single photon with a unique member of the alphabet. When the alphabet contains a lot of members, the photon carries lots of information. It's not hard to see why, when an alphabet contains only 2 members, such as binary code, each member encodes 1 bit of information. This is the amount of information needed to describe each symbol in the alphabet. Okay, I'm with them so far on that. I think I get that. I think I get where they're going. When the alphabet is bigger, it takes more information to uniquely describe each member. So each can encode that amount of data. The amount of information is given by the log to the base 2 of the number of members. So you have a base level 2 of the number of its members. I'm getting a bit confused. These terminologies, how they talk, is not really how I practice in everyday conversation, but trying to understand this in a bigger picture. Each symbol encodes about 3.3 bits. In an alphabet of 26 symbols, such as English alphabet, each symbol encodes 4.7 bits, and so on. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. In an alphabet of 26 symbols, such as English alphabet, each symbol... So you got 3.3 bits for each symbol. Alphabet, 26 symbols, the English alphabet. Each symbol encodes, and so on. Okay. Tentrup and co achieve their goal by creating an alphabet with 9,072 symbols. In that case, each symbol encodes more than 13 bits of information. Creating an alphabet is simple. Tentrup can do it by defining a 112 times 81 grid of pixels. That's 9,072 of them. Each pixel represents a different symbol of the alphabet. Now, I'm typically a visual thinker. I understand that. That makes much more sense to me. When they describe when descriptions are like that, visual, I can see this chart now where you would have these pixels, and of course, you can define like you do on a chessboard. Like, you got F1 or A, all these positions, right? The actual position across and down, or whichever, would be that description, and be your description of your alphabet, okay? And you'd have 9,072 of them. Each pixel represents symbol in the alphabet. To encode a photon with one of these symbols, all they have to do is point the photon toward that part of the grid. Now that makes even more sense as well. Again, it's the same photon, but within a maybe milliseconds of time or whatever, you can divert the photon to a particular position on the grid that equals whatever symbol out of the 9,072. You could actually have a complete processing language here digitally. So when a specific pixel registers the arrival of a photon, it registers that symbol. This makes much more sense to me, this bit, than it did with the... I scroll up with these. That'll come in place if I try a bit harder, perhaps. It might be actually simple enough that I'm missing the point. Some bits of this. Tricky part is doing this accurately with single photons. One way to steer photons is with a tilting mirror. Again, they're just like their material. If they have the right type of mirror at the right angle, they have a perfect reflection. This is why I said, this can store data as noughts and ones in light. But it's even more advanced than that, as we can see. Tilting the mirror that reflects them in a specific controllable direction. But Tentrup and Co. use a more flexible device called a spatial light modulator, which modifies the photon's wavefront as it reflects. This uses diffraction effects to steer the photon towards its target. So I guess this is what this is about. This diffraction within that blue square. Maybe that's where that's going. I'm going to talk to Jerry about this. Jerry helps with the website, and we could form an article. We already have an article about the perfect mirror technology from MIT. See what he thinks going over this, and see if we can understand it in a better way. Actually, understanding it enough just to put the article out, and other people can have a look at it. Encourage experts on this as well, who can layman term things for us as well. This is what Exploratory Minds really is focused on, how the approach, and we reward and shout out to those who can do the best for us, help us, help you, sort of feedback loop. So tricky part is doing this accurately with single photons. Read that bit. Flexible device called spatial modulator. Read that bit. Steer the right target. Detecting single photons is also a potential banana skin. Now I like that. I like terms like that. It's everyday average dumbass like me can relate to. Potentially you're going to screw up because it's very hard and difficult to detect single photons, obviously, because it's such a small size. Since any stray light can overwhelm the signal, exactly, Tentrup and Co. have a handy trick for preventing this. Instead of creating single photons, they create them in pairs and encode just one of them with information using this steering mechanism. They look out for the other as a warning that the first is about to arrive at the pixel. This is deep, clever, complicated shiz. It really is. I love this kind of stuff. You can always taste the brain matter there, not to be graphic, but this is fascinating. I did say I was back on track, and this is going to go on EN Network channel before I actually formulate an extension of the article that we already have. If I do, actually, before I work on something else. The results are nonetheless impressive. We demonstrate high dimensional encoding of single photons reaching 10.5 bit per photon. Says Tentrup and Co. That significantly improves on previous record, or just even bits per photon, and immediately suggests ways to encode even more by increasing the size of the grid. Yeah, you're only limited on speed. It's always about speed, really, with processing. How fast can... you... Obviously, light has a particular set speed, but how fast can you set a system to be in position to diffract the photon to that particular pixel on the grid? Then there's your processing speed right there, right? And the bigger the grid, the more there is. The bigger the grid, the bigger the alphabet, the more information, the more bits, the more data, and so on from light. And obviously there'd be something electrical positioning things for electrical charge to have things set in a particular way. But the light itself doesn't require a signal going across a circuit board electrically necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously complicated and not, I try to layman things down so I can understand them as well, and it's not always that easy. This is the hard work that actually needs to be done with such information so it can be understood by a greater public who might be interested in these things but shy away from things because of complicated terminologies and scientific jargon here and there as well. I think this is absolutely fascinating. Let's just read this last paragraph. This information is currently encoded in single photons using the binary code of zeros and ones, but the new technique immediately allows each photon to carry an order of magnitude more. A very promising direction for this work would then be implementation of a large spatial alphabet encoding quantum key distribution. Yeah, if you have a grid, there's no reason why the grid couldn't be a cube in 3-dimension spatial directions, lighting up. I mean, in theory, as to exactly how, but I don't know, but it would be a very complicated system. But your depth, width, and height, if you have a dimensional array, anyone who knows programming on computers will know what a dimensional array is. And to visualize that in 3 dimensions, a cube, just like a Rubik's Cube, I have one. Yeah. Each cube within the grid would be your pixel. You just need bigger and bigger array, right? For more and more information. And again, you're just limited on speed of how fast can something be tweaked to move something that a mirror in a position to divert the photon. I mean, the photon will be a set speed anyway, but the setting might take processing speed configuration to give you a direction of the refraction for the photon. I hope people are getting this. So I'm beginning to confuse myself a little bit, perhaps. This will be added. This is an exploratory mind typical approach, right? We're exploring this and with our minds in theory as well as factual stuff that they are actually working on as practical practice, which leads to more theory of could we do this, that, or the other, right? Again, this can go on EN Network channel. You see, this is better than talking about some dimwit, Jason Smith, who thinks the Earth's shadow causes the moon's phases, right? Hence why I would shift stuff about that to another channel, those who know what that's about. So thank you very much for watching. Take care, peace out, stay awesome. Comment, rate and subscribe. If you want to donate to the project, please do. Donation link will be below. That is my PayPal. Sites are now linked into my YouTube, so like on the banner you'll be able to have a look at the Teespring, merchandise and all this. So cheers. Thank you very much for your interest. Cheers. Bye.